know, I'm a special breed. And I've got secrets, girl. Loads of them! Ask them! If she dies, Shaquille dies too.
Go on. And the circumcision of the baby comes up in exactly 8 days. And you know we don't.
I'm a born artist. I still have my earliest drawings with me. My parents kept them. Those drawings were of my parents getting ready to go to work before I started school. My dad and my mom, they were both police officers. So when they're wearing their uniforms, sometimes they just say, oh, I said, okay, pose for me, let me draw. So they would just pose and I'll draw them, you know. And at that time, it wasn't popular for a child to say he wants to be an artist. But it's because somehow it came in as something that was fun. You know, they just dress up, oh, draw me, and they come back from work and they're sitting there, I'm drawing them before I started school.
A graduate of the University of Benin, Nigeria, where he obtained a bachelor's degree in fine arts, Stanlee Ohikuare's artistic tendencies propelled him to explore various forms of art expressions.
Right after school, I got a job with an advertising agency as an illustrator and graphic artist. Though I didn't know how to use the computer so well then, but you know, I just challenged myself. I took the job and I learned on the job how to do graphic design. So my core strength then was like illustration. So I was there and I was servicing other agencies, like they had storyboards to do for their commercials and everything.
He is a self-taught 3D animator, graphic artist, video editor, visual effects creator, stunts director, and has also handled quite a number of TV commercials.
I started meeting people who shoot TVCs, you know, and the brains behind all the TVCs that were being shot at that point in time. So after some time, I started teaching myself animation because I realized that a lot of those scripts and the storyboards, they involved animations. And I think there was actually the demand for animation or animated content, but the supply wasn't like as robust as it should be. Perhaps there were like 1 or 2 people who could do animations locally. So it's like everybody who needed to do animation had to get to these guys. So there was an opening there. And I felt, okay, fine, I could learn animation and fill that space. Then I realized that, you know, now I've trained myself. So I just felt it was time to move on.
Today, he runs a creative consultancy and production company called Mighty Jot Studios, the platform under which he has been producing and directing movies as a filmmaker since 2011.
I soon realized that for all the commercials I was making, I didn't have my name to them. So you couldn't just see a commercial and say, this was done by this person. Unlike a movie whereby if you shot a movie, the moment someone sees it, there's an opening credit, there's an end credit, and you know all the people behind it. So I just felt, you know, I could do this all my life, and really, people out there never get to know who's doing this. Apart from getting my name out there, it was more about passion. I don't think it was challenging to me anymore shooting commercials. You know, I was more excited about the animated commercials because I'm also an animator. But then after some time, the demand for animated commercials began to dwindle because people felt it was expensive to achieve. But then why wouldn't it be expensive? It takes a lot to get it done. So I think the decline in the demand for animated work got me not so excited. You know, so for me it was more about self-expression, but then in that self-expression being adequately credited for the work you've done.
Why did you make the transition to filmmaking?
Yeah, it was a tough decision because many times you don't know what to expect. So it wasn't as if I also had like a robust bank account and that I was looking at and gaining confidence with, like, okay, you know what, whatever happens, I can fall back to this money in this account. There wasn't anything of such. All I did was I took out some time and I wrote out all the things I was I had the capability to do, all my abilities, all my skills, my strengths and everything. And when I had listed them out, I looked at it again, and looking at that list, I was sure that there was no way I could be on my own and not survive, being able to do all the things I had written down. And I knew all I had to do was to look for the people who needed those services. It took away all the anxiety and all the fear and uncertainty. And I was quite sure that the decision I had made was right.
A photography enthusiast and an ardent lover of great cinematography, Stanlee explains his concept of business and entrepreneurship.
The only issue would be if you don't have aspirations, if you don't know what you want to do, if maybe you are at one step now and you're not sure of where you wanted to get to when you take your next step. But for me, that wasn't a problem. I already knew all the things I wanted to achieve. So when I'm servicing client A and he pays money, I invest the money into the same process that service client A, while investing again in the processes that will enable me service client B in the future. I did not still understand the process of collecting the bank loan, and I don't think I ever want to. You know, it just feels good sleeping and waking up and knowing that you're not owing anybody any money. You know, it takes a lot of dedication and focus. Funding doesn't come from anywhere else. It just comes from doing the same things, getting the money you get paid, reinvesting into the same business, and making high aspirations.
The Nigerian movie industry, known as Nollywood, may very well be growing and gaining international recognition. However, he shares a few setbacks confronting the practice of filmmaking in Nigeria.
I've been working on an animated movie since 2005, yeah, and I worked on it consecutively for 4 years, back to back. And if I showed you how much I spent within those 4 years, I don't think you would justify it. And most of the spending went into power. Because for instance, if you're doing something animated, you have to keep running your generator. There can't be any power outage. So there's a UPS, and the systems are routed to your UPS to make sure in case there's any interruption, your work continues, because you're rendering animation. You get what I'm trying to say? So it's like frame by frame by frame. When you play together, it becomes a movie. And again, because you render and you preview, and maybe there's a fault somewhere, you just notice something that shouldn't be there, you have to stop, then do the whole process all over again. And that's your burning fuel. The funding is very important, because like in Nigeria, you find a situation whereby the person who is directing the movie is also the producer, or if there's an executive producer, and the executive producer is just looking for his returns on investment, and then his pressure dovetails to the producer, who's trying to look for, okay, let's finish this on time and put it in the cinemas, let's make our money back. And then everything now falls back to the director, whose major interest is quality and technical efficiency. Sometime last year, I know there was this federal government grant for entertainment, you know. But then what I'm not so sure of is how people get the grants. So at the end of the day, you find people like me who, you know, I'd rather spend that time I should be using to look for grants to just sit down and do something interesting that will satisfy my creative endeavors.
How have you managed to get along in this business in spite of the daunting challenges, as it were?
I didn't come into filmmaking because I wanted to make quick cash. You understand? If it was about quick money, then maybe after the first attempt, I would have given up and gone back to shooting commercials or doing some other thing. You know, but it's purely out of passion. You know, there's a lot to be expressed. There are lots of stories to be told that have not been told, which I know I can tell convincingly. You know, and I just believe the time will come where this passion will interweave with the opportunity to make good money from the effort that's been put into filmmaking. And I think the best mindset a filmmaker in Nigeria should have is to know that, you know, just do what you love doing, do it well, and just wait patiently for that day when the whole system stabilizes and there's a mechanism in place whereby even with the effect of piracy and all that, you will still be able to get good money for the effort you're putting into making a good movie. If I have a content that people will see in the US and pay money to see, and people will pay money to see in the UK and in India and in Asia, all over the world, apart from just Nigeria, there's really no way you won't break even. You might not make the kind of money they make in Hollywood, but you make enough money to want to reinvest and make more movies. You understand? So I think the game is waiting patiently to get to that point. But while you're waiting to get to that point, you know, you should be found being diligent and still doing things the right way. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is just a little extra. You know, so it's all about always putting that little extra. You might not have all the money in the world, but just keep putting a little extra to make sure what you did yesterday and what you are doing today is a significant difference in terms of how well you've progressed from the last time you did a movie.
What inspires you as a person, generally?
Yeah, inspiration comes from above. Inspiration comes from God. You know, and again, from the things I see. As I'm moving around, driving, walking, I think I'm good at paying attention to everything that happens around me. So when a normal story comes your way, it's easy to embellish it because you remember a lot of things that you've encountered, a lot of things you've seen, even passively. You know, a simple story of a guy walking along the street and gets hit down by a car. Because of something else I've seen before, I can paint it in a more vivid way, you know, make it more interesting by infusing things I've seen, things I've experienced. You know, everything that my sense of sight, hearing, and touch, you know, and taste, wherever, all the things that my senses experience, I always try to fuse them into stories.
Stanlee also delights in empowering other youths like himself to be better individuals, especially in the practice and business of filmmaking.
They say a company is only as good as its staff. You understand? So a production house or a production company or a production generally, a film production is as good as the crew that worked on it. One thing I do dutifully is to keep training more and more people to have competence in filmmaking. We've been having these training sessions we do in Yabatek called Creator Factor. Things like 2 days intensive, and each of the time we had like maybe like 650, 700 people in attendance. And at the end of the day, people come and they learn photography, filmmaking, animation, web design, graphic design, sound design, video editing, all that, you know. And majority of the guys who work with me on film projects now are guys from those trainings. At any point in time where I need to generate, no matter how many man crew to work on anything, the people are available. So the training comes free of charge. We contact all the key people in the industry, you know, to come around and help to train people, and they come. There are a lot of people out there who would never even scratch the surface of what they can do. It will just be this wish that I wish I could. But you give them a foundation. So it's easier for people to build upon the foundation than to look for how to get the foundation themselves.
I look at my course of study, which is related to filming and all that. It has to be communication arts, and it has been a worthwhile experience for me for the past 4 years. And I'm looking forward to veering into film production myself. At least he's a mentor to me. He's somebody I look up to every time I work with him. And it's somebody that I've been trying to learn a lot of things through. And I believe learning a lot from me at the end of the day will place me where I really want to be. He's one of the strong and emerging directors in the industry presently, going by his antecedents and all that and what he has done so far in the industry. He's somebody that is very creative, and I look forward to getting to wherever he has gotten to and surpass his achievement as well as a person.
My biggest dream is that people come here, we do stuff together. If 5 years ago was the first time I worked with somebody, 7 years later, that person should be an authority. Believe me, in as much as I want to keep working with the same set of people, but not in the same capacity. That you can never cage a creative person.
and he offers a few words of advice to budding entrepreneurs.
Every talent, every gift, every ability, every hobby can become big business. But then the thought of it being big business should come only after you fully express yourself, stretch yourself out. Someone once said, spend your talent as if you're a rich man who's trying to get poor by force. Do what you're passionate about. That's thing you want to express. If you do not express it, the world will never see it. So let not even money be strong enough to hold you back from doing that thing which you want to do. That's medium you have to express yourself. I think those are gifts and talents that you should not just waste. For instance, I found myself drawing. I didn't learn how to draw from anywhere. So if I lost that talent can keep someone else going forever, for a lifetime. There's someone who, if he could just draw, he wouldn't be jobless today. He said, boy, I can draw, I can paint, I can do all this. So it's very easy to take those things for granted and all that. But the important thing in life is never take any ability for granted. You only have one lifetime to express yourself.
In his journey to self-discovery, he has been influenced by key players in the world of arts and movies.
As an artist, I was influenced by Salvador Dali. He was a surrealist. You know, your inspiration comes from dreams and fantasies and all that. So I've brought that into filmmaking as well. You know, so the element of fantasy is still what I hold dearly to. Also, as a painter, I think one of the people who till date I respect a lot in terms of he's also a surrealist, an excellent illustrator, and it's crazy too. One of my lectures back then in school, I'll drag Okoju, I think. Yeah, I've not told him to his face before, but I believe he should be one of the finest painters Nigeria has seen. Then back into the film industry. My best movie of all time is still The Godfather. So that brings him to the limelight. Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo, the brains behind The Godfather. There was just this tonal intensity in the whole of the movie, and I really appreciated it. It's been in my head even long before I ever imagined I would be a filmmaker. But in terms of my inclination as a person and the things I fantasize about in terms of what I want to represent in movies, that will go to Quentin Tarantino. I've never met this guy, but I believe to a large extent, I think somehow, in Nigeria, Femi Odugbemi, Tunde Kelani, you know, but personally, I hold very dearly to Femi Odugbemi because I've experienced him, I've related with him, I understand his personality. He's someone who I look at and I see and I say, okay, with all these guys achieved, there's still no iota of pride in him, and it just keeps me going. And I know that, you know, there's really nothing or nowhere I get to in my life that I start becoming proud about anything.
What is a typical Stanlee Ohikuare production?
I love paying attention to details. Details that other people will just leave out and feel not so important about. I pay attention to them. I always like putting that little extra. I'm a shooting director. I don't just direct, I direct behind the camera. So again, apart from telling the actors what to do and supervising the entire cast and crew and everything, I'm also seeing what people will see when the finished product comes out, because I'm seeing through the camera. You understand? I'd rather take away 60% of dialogue from any movie if the dialogue is not taking the movie anywhere, and let the camera do the work. There's a way the camera does the work, and you can tell the story without anybody saying a word. You understand? So that has become like a signature to me.
As a director, Stanlee loves being behind the camera to ensure that there is visual fidelity in his productions. And on the 8th of March 2014, his feature-length film, The Deadwood, bagged the award of Best Documentary at the prestigious Africa Magic Viewers' Choice Awards.
Many did die while waiting for payment of pension and gratuity. Some others did not wait to get home. At least one, to my knowledge, collapsed and died in the Treasury premises while waiting for his turn to collect his pension, when such payments were made in cash.
When we shot the documentary, The Deadwood, it wasn't because we're getting money from somewhere to do it so much, you know. We're just doing it passionately, with all of our hearts. Not thinking about whether we're going, it wasn't even, there was no way we're going to make money from that. So it's just about passing a social message, like making movies for social change. But to see that same effort being rewarded, you know, it tells me that there's something right about the practice, the way we've been operating, you know. It's not always about money. When I find myself doing something like this, I just realize that I have a very powerful tool in my hand, and the way I choose to use it matters. If I choose to just use it to seek wealth, then I'd rather do something else.
Some of his other movies include Heavy Beauty, Loop, Tunnel, Oblivious, which have also earned him several nominations, a couple of awards, and honorable recognition in the film industry.
The Deadwood that won the AMVCA, it was also nominated for Best Short Movie, you understand, and it won the Cross River State Merit Award for Entertainment, even before the AMVCA. You know, I have another short movie out there called Loop. Has like 5 nominations and 1 award to it. You understand? The Ian's Premonition we also featured in the AMVCA. That was like the web series. We have the feature film called Ian's The Feast of Souls, like a horror movie. My joy is that people are beginning to see what's being done and they're appreciating it. But once people can reckon with you and know that whenever you put something out there, something worth seeing, I think that's the first step. That's the first achievement every filmmaker should yearn for.
With all the recognition from filmmaking, his first love remains photography.
You hardly catch me without a still camera, anytime, anywhere. I'm even tempted to take pictures while I'm driving. You know, there's something about photography. It's like you capture a moment for a lifetime. Something that's just happening in a fleeting moment, you capture it and you can refer to it over and over again for eternity. But again, the significance of photography to me is because I'm a cinematographer. So for you to be a good cinematographer, you must understand photography in terms of framing, in terms of composition, in terms of catching the right mood and all that.
Stanlee is a surrealist, and for his future productions, fasten your belts for audacious fantasy with a measurable degree of artistic juxtaposition.
I expect a lot of projects that will be daring, projects that will be very expressive, you know, and a couple of collaborations with other filmmakers, both local and international. You know, so I think the deal is to just keep pushing the limits.